You know, in every social landscape, whether it's a high-stakes boardroom or just a casual dinner party, you see them. These people who just seem to have a kind of gravity. They walk into a room and almost instantly they become its center. Attention, respect, it all just flows their way, effortlessly. And a lot of the time, they haven't earned it through years of work. In fact, they're often brand new. We usually just chuck this up to charisma, right? Some kind of magical quality you're either born with or you're not. But what if it's not a trait? What if it's a system? What if this instant influence is actually a predictable, mechanical process, one that can be learned, decoded, and even defended against? Today, we're taking apart the architecture of popularity, and we're going to show you that it's not magic, it's a structural hack of our own social psychology.
And it all starts with this central paradox of social power. The people who command the most favor, they're never the ones asking for it. They're not chasing your approval, laughing the loudest at every joke, or agreeing with everyone just to be liked. Instead, they create a dynamic where their approval becomes the prize. They subtly flip the script, turning our natural desire to connect into a competition for their attention. Now, this isn't about being arrogant or aloof. It's a fundamental re-engineering of the social contract. By being the source of validation instead of the seeker, they set up a high-status frame right from the start. And understanding this one principle is the key to seeing the hidden machinery at work.
So, this brings us to a scenario that I know is frustratingly common. We see it everywhere. We're always told that competence, hard work, and real value are the currencies that matter. You know, build a better product, get better results, be a reliable teammate, and you'll be rewarded. But our own eyes tell us a different story, don't they? We constantly see a carefully crafted vibe, an aura of confidence and connection, completely overshadowing years of proven value. This is the popularity paradox, and it's the core problem we're going to dissect. It's the reason a brilliant but quiet engineer gets overlooked while a smooth-talking newcomer gets the promotion.
And this really lays out the dynamic in action. On one side, you've got the high performer. This is the person who's been delivering results for years. Their competence is on the record, their value is real. But they often find themselves just struggling for visibility, their ideas get talked over, their contributions are just taken for granted. And then, on the other side, the newcomer arrives. Within days, they're treated like royalty. Their opinions are sought after, their jokes always land, and they seem to completely bypass that critical audit of competence that everyone else had to go through. This isn't just unfair, it's a systemic failure in how groups evaluate people. It creates what's called a valuation gap, where the perceived status, the vibe, consistently beats documented performance.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Your reaction to this newcomer, it's not entirely your own. That feeling of being impressed, of being drawn to them, isn't just about their personality. You are not simply being charmed. You are being sorted. The moment they walk in and establish that high-status frame, an invisible process kicks off that places them at the top of a brand new hierarchy. And everyone else in the room is then slotted into a position relative to them. It's a subtle, almost subconscious sorting mechanism that happens before a single meaningful word about work is ever exchanged. Your brain isn't just reacting to them. It's reacting to the signals the rest of the room is sending about them. And there's a name for this mechanism. It's called social preselection. It's an invisible system where a person's status is basically decided for you by the perceived consensus of the group. So why does the group fall for this so easily? Well, frankly, because the crowd is cognitively tired. Properly evaluating a new person from scratch, their skills, their character, their trustworthiness, that's difficult, energy-intensive work. So instead, the group looks for a shortcut. It outsources its judgment, and that leads to a phenomenon where everyone just assumes that if everyone else seems to like this person, there must be a good reason. It's this fear of being the only one who doesn't get it that overwrites our own critical thinking.
All right, this brings us to the system itself, how this popularity is actually engineered. This isn't random. It's not a lucky personality. It's a strategic process, whether it's done consciously or just intuitively. The person with this social gravity isn't just passively soaking up admiration. They are actively, if subtly, capturing the group's entire valuation system. They're turning the group's own mental shortcuts against it to create this feedback loop that just reinforces their own high status. Let's break down the mechanics.
So this process almost always unfolds in 3 distinct phases. It kicks off with a high-status entry, which sets that initial frame and perception. Then comes the most critical leverage point, Gatekeeper Alignment, which basically hijacks the existing power structure. And once that's done, the system pretty much runs itself, triggering the final phase, the affiliation rush. That's when the rest of the group does all the work of cementing the newcomer's position at the top. Each step just builds on the last one, creating this unstoppable social momentum.
Step 2, Gatekeeper Alignment. This is the master stroke. A savvy operator doesn't try to win over a whole room of 30 people. That's inefficient, and it signals that you need approval. Instead, they identify the 2 or 3 key people, the hub nodes, that the rest of the group is quietly watching for social cues. These are your established leaders, the influencers, the respected veterans. By focusing only on getting a quick public signal of approval from them, a shared laugh, a confidential whisper, a moment of mutual respect, the newcomer anchors their own value directly to the top of the existing hierarchy. It's a status trade. The gatekeeper's hard-won approval gets instantly transferred, and in that moment, the entire room takes notice and recalibrates.
And this is the critical inflection point. The second the gatekeepers signal their acceptance, the dynamic shifts from just personality to systemic pressure. For everyone else watching, a state of, let's call it, social dissonance is created. Their internal thought process is something like, wait, the people I respect seem to really value this new person. If I don't see it, am I the one who's wrong? Am I out of the loop? And that feeling is deeply uncomfortable. So to resolve it and avoid the risk of being excluded, the group rushes to align. This is the affiliation rush, a stampede of public validation where people actually compete to show they were an early adopter of the newcomer, which just reinforces the new reality and makes it nearly impossible to challenge.
Okay, so now we understand the how, the tactical playbook. But to really get a grip on its power, we have to look deeper into the psychology of why. Why are our social brains so ridiculously susceptible to this kind of engineering? Well, the answer isn't a personal weakness. It's in our brain's ruthless evolutionary drive for efficiency. This whole system works so well because it exploits the very operating system our brains run on.
And this really gets to the heart of it. Our brain's primary directive, right after keeping us alive, is to conserve energy. Thinking is expensive. The brain uses about 20% of our calories, even though it's only 2% of our weight. So doing a detailed, objective evaluation of every single new person we meet is just incredibly hard work. So, given the choice, the brain will always look for a shortcut. It's a metabolic miser. It's constantly seeking the path of least cognitive resistance. It would rather have a good enough answer that comes quickly than a perfect answer that takes a lot of effort.
And this leads us to one of the most powerful shortcuts of all, social proof. It's a simple rule of thumb that's just baked into our DNA. Instead of doing the hard work of evaluating someone from scratch, we outsource the decision. We just look at what other people are doing, especially high-status people, and we assume their actions are the right way to behave. If the boss is laughing at the newcomer's joke, my brain concludes it must be a good joke, so I should probably laugh too. If the team lead is listening intently to their idea, my brain concludes the idea must be smart. We're not making a conscious choice, we're copying a perceived consensus to save energy and, more importantly, to make sure we stay safely inside the tribe.
So this is the key question you have to start asking yourself whenever you feel that powerful magnetic pull of social gravity. Are you genuinely connecting with this individual based on their actual merits, their character, the substance of what they're saying? Or are you just responding to the powerful, invisible pressure of the consensus that's formed around them? It takes real effort to separate those two feelings. And most of the time, we're not liking a person as much as we are liking the feeling of safety and inclusion that comes with agreeing with the group. Answering this question honestly is the first step toward getting your cognitive autonomy back.
But it goes even deeper than that. This effect gets amplified when the popular person triggers the halo effect. Because they project confidence and they've already gotten that high status approval, we subconsciously start assigning them a whole bunch of unearned virtues. We just assume they're also smarter, more competent, more trustworthy than they've ever proven to be. They stop being a person and they become a symbol. They become a mirror of aspiration. We project our own desires for status and success onto them. Our admiration for them is really an admiration for the version of ourselves we imagine we could be in their orbit. We aren't just liking them, we're liking the potential upgrade to our own identity.
So now that we have this knowledge, what do we do with it? We're aware of the hidden architecture of popularity. The goal isn't to become cynical or withdrawn. It's to become strategic and sovereign in our own judgments. It's about shifting from passively feeling the vibe to actively reading the social map. So how do you reclaim your agency, defend against this kind of manipulation, and maybe even use these dynamics ethically to make sure true value gets recognized?
All right, here's your tactical playbook. First, you deploy the tactical pause. When you feel that social rush to like someone new, you deliberately stop and you ask yourself, what have they actually done? What value have they created? Separate the charm from the competence. Second, you practice strategic neutrality. You have to resist that intense urge to be an early adopter and publicly signal your approval.
High-status people are often the last to give their approval, not the first, because their validation has weight. By waiting and observing, you hold on to your power. And finally, and this is the most constructive one, practice status gifting. Instead of trying to align with a new high-status person, use your own confidence to publicly elevate someone on the team who's doing great work but is being overlooked. This builds genuine alliances based on substance, which is the ultimate antidote to this whole system.
Now, for anyone in a leadership position, this is absolutely crucial. Your job is to be the circuit breaker for these charisma feedback loops. When you see one person suddenly becoming the golden child, your responsibility is to audit reality. Are they actually delivering that much more value, or has the team just fallen into a state of social herding? True influence, true leadership isn't about collecting attention for yourself. It's about having the clarity and the courage to protect the group from its own biases and to direct its collective attention toward what is actually valuable and true.
And this really just reveals the illusion at the heart of this entire dynamic. So much of what we call popularity is really just a house of cards built on collective assumption. It's a shared belief that's powerful, precisely because no one dares to question it out loud for fear of being the only one who doesn't see the emperor's new clothes. The person who can see through this, who can distinguish the human from the halo they're wearing, possesses a rare and powerful form of social intelligence that is just immune to this type of manipulation.
And that leads us to our final provocative takeaway. This entire game of chasing likability is a low-status trap. The real path to influence isn't about begging for approval or performing a personality you think other people will like. It's about operating with the calm, unstated assumption of your own value, and then managing the social signals, the proof that communicates that value to others. Focus on your craft, deliver exceptional results, build genuine relationships, and let that undeniable evidence speak for itself. It is a fundamental shift from seeking validation to building a reality where your value is self-evident. So the question is, are you going to keep playing their game, or are you going to start designing your own?